I've had my fun. Now, I'm ready to be a wife again. That was the text she sent me. After a year of silence. After a year of me rebuilding my life from the ashes she left behind. She thought she could just pause our marriage, go out and live her wild single life, and then hit play whenever she felt like it. She actually thought I was sitting by the phone, waiting for her to come back. I didn't reply. I just let it sit there. But she didn't take the hint. She showed up at my door, expecting a tearful reunion. Instead, she saw something that made her face go ghost white. She realized that while she was out having fun, I had upgraded my entire life. Welcome back to Inspiration Seeker. If you enjoy stories about karma, self-improvement, and sweet revenge, make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and drop a comment below. Have you ever had an ex try to crawl back after realizing the grass wasn't greener? Let me know. Now, let's get into the story. It started on a Tuesday. A rainy, miserable Tuesday in Seattle. The kind of weather that usually makes you want to curl up on the couch with your spouse and watch a movie. But there was no movie playing at our house. There was only the sound of a zipper tearing through the silence of our bedroom. I stood in the doorway, holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold 10 minutes ago. I watched my wife Jessica throwing clothes into a suitcase with a frantic energy I had never seen before. It wasn't a neatly packed bag for a business trip, it was chaos. Shoes on top of silk blouses, jeans tangling with chargers. It looked like she was escaping a fire. Jess, can we please just talk about this? I asked, my voice cracking. I hated how weak I sounded. She didn't even look up. She just kept zipping. There's nothing to talk about, Mark. I've been saying this for months. You just haven't been listening. That was a lie. We hadn't been talking for months. We had been existing in the same space, sure, but she had been emotionally checked out since her 26th birthday. She finally snapped the suitcase shut and turned to face me. There were no tears in her eyes. That was the hardest part to process. She looked annoyed, like I was a customer service agent keeping her from a flight. Look, she sighed, running a hand through her hair. I love you, Mark. But I'm not in love with you anymore. I feel stifled. Stifled. I repeated. We have a house. We have a life. I support everything you do. That's the problem, she snapped. It's too settled. It's too predictable. I'm 26 years old, and I feel like I'm 40. I never got to be single, Mark. I never got to date around, or go clubbing in Miami without checking in with a husband, or just exist for myself. She walked past me, the wheels of her suitcase rumbling loudly over the hardwood floor. It sounded like thunder in the quiet house. I followed her to the front door, my heart hammering against my ribs. So that's it? I asked, grabbing her arm gently to stop her. You're throwing away 4 years of marriage because you want to go to a club? She pulled her arm away. It's not just a club, Mark. It's about freedom. I need to know who I am outside of US. I need to experience what I missed out on in college because I was too busy being the perfect girlfriend. She put her hand on the doorknob. I'm sorry, but I have to go live my best life before I'm too old to enjoy it. You're a great guy. You'll find someone boring and safe who likes this life. But I'm suffocating. And with that, she opened the door. The rain blew in, soaking the entryway mat. She didn't look back. She didn't hesitate. She walked out to her car, threw her bag in the trunk, and drove away, leaving me standing in the open doorway, watching her taillights fade into the gray evening. She was off to find her fun. I was left with a mortgage, an empty house, and a silence so loud it was deafening. The first month after Jessica left was a blur of insomnia, cheap whiskey, and takeout boxes. I became a cliché. I was the sad, abandoned husband living in a house that was too big for one person, haunted by the ghost of a marriage that apparently only I cared about. But the worst part wasn't the silence in the house, it was the noise on social media. Like a masochist, I broke the #1 rule of breakups. I watched her life unfold through a 6-inch screen. Jessica wasn't just leaving me, she was broadcasting her liberation to the world. I saw photos of her in Las Vegas, holding oversized cocktails, surrounded by guys who looked like they peaked in high school. I saw stories of her in Miami, dancing on tables with captions like, "Finally breathing," and "Living my truth." Every post felt like a physical blow to the gut. While I was barely functioning, struggling to drag myself out of bed for work, she was having the time of her life. She looked radiant, happy, and completely unbothered by the wreckage she had left behind in Seattle. She had erased me. Then came the Tuesday, exactly 8 weeks after she left, when I hit my limit. I was doom scrolling at 2 a.m., staring at a picture of her on a boat with some random guy's arm around her waist, when I caught my own reflection in the dark window. I looked terrible. I looked like a victim. That night, something snapped. I didn't want her back anymore. I wanted to be someone she couldn't recognize. I put down the phone and did the hardest thing I've ever done. I blocked her. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, her phone number, everything. I severed the digital limb. If she was going to be a ghost in my house, I was going to make sure she was invisible in my life. I channeled every ounce of that anger and grief into 2 things, my code and iron. I work in software development, a field where you can easily disappear into your screen for 12 hours a day. I became a machine. I took on the projects nobody else wanted. I cleaned up messy legacy code until my eyes burned. When I wasn't coding, I was at the gym. At first, I lifted weights to punish myself, to exhaust my body so I could actually sleep. But soon, the pain became fuel. 6 months flew by in a haze of productivity. The sad husband vibe evaporated. I dropped 20 pounds of stress weight and replaced it with muscle. I bought a new wardrobe, sharp, fitted clothes that the old Mark would have thought were too much. At work, my obsessive focus paid off. I landed a massive promotion to senior lead developer, which came with a significant raise and a level of respect I hadn't had before. I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick. I wasn't doing it for her anymore. I was doing it because I realized that the man she left was gone, and the man taking his place was someone much, much stronger. Fate has a twisted sense of humor. Sometimes, the universe puts people in your path just to show you what you've been missing. For me, that moment happened on a crisp Thursday morning in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of a downtown skyscraper. My firm had sent me to consult on a massive system overhaul for a high-end logistics company. It was a high-stakes project, the kind that could make or break a career. I walked in feeling confident, wearing one of my new tailored suits, ready to lead the technical briefing. But when the client's VP turned around to greet me, I nearly dropped my tablet. It was Elena. I recognized her immediately, not because we had met, but because Jessica had spent 2 years complaining about her. To hear my ex-wife tell it, Elena was the boss from hell. Jessica used to come home fuming, calling Elena a tyrant, an ice queen, a woman who made everyone's life miserable just because she had no life of her own. According to Jessica, Elena was the reason she quit that job. She was impossible to please. I braced myself for a confrontation with a monster. But the woman who shook my hand didn't have claws. She had a firm grip, a warm smile, and eyes that were sharp with intelligence, not malice. "Mark, I'm Elena. I've heard great things about your code structure," she said. Her voice was calm and commanding. Throughout the meeting, I kept waiting for the Ice Queen to appear. She never did. Instead, I saw a woman who was incredibly competent. She didn't tolerate incompetence, which I realized was probably why Jessica hated her, but she was fair. She was brilliant. She asked questions that showed she actually understood the tech, unlike most executives I dealt with. After the meeting ran late, the room cleared out, leaving just the 2 of us packing up. "You know," she said, pausing as she closed her laptop. "You look familiar. Did you ever pick up, was it Jessica? From the office a few years ago?" I stiffened. "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And yes, probably." "Ah, ex. I see," Elena said. Her tone wasn't pitying. It was thoughtful. She was spirited. Not much for deadlines, though. We both laughed. It was a genuine, shared moment of understanding. In that second, I realized that everything Jessica had told me about this woman was a lie born of insecurity. Jessica hated Elena because Elena was everything Jessica wasn't: disciplined, successful, and accountable. "Well, Mark," Elena said, checking her watch. "Since we're going to be working closely on this project, and it's technically lunch hour, do you hike? I know a great spot near here to grab a quick bite, but you have to be willing to walk a few blocks." "I hike every weekend," I smiled. That lunch lasted 2 hours. We didn't talk about Jessica again. We talked about trails and the Cascades, the absurdity of corporate jargon, and old sci-fi movies. By the time I left the building, I wasn't thinking about my past. I was thinking about the fact that for the first time in a year, I didn't want to go home alone. They say the best revenge is massive success, but I discovered something even better: peace. Dating Elena was like waking up from a coma. With Jessica, every day was a negotiation. I was always walking on eggshells, trying to navigate her moods, her insecurities, her constant need for validation. With Elena, it was easy. It was adult. We started seeing each other officially a month after that lunch. It wasn't a whirlwind romance fueled by drama. It was a partnership. We spent weekends hiking the jagged peaks of the Pacific Northwest, pushing each other to reach the summit. We spent nights debating tech trends or cooking dinner together with a glass of wine. There were no games. If she was busy, she said so. If she missed me, she showed up. It was a breath of fresh air I didn't know I was suffocating for. 6 months into our relationship, I made a decision that felt like cutting the final anchor. I put the suburban house on the market. That house was the mausoleum of my failed marriage. Every corner held a memory of Jessica complaining about the paint color, or the neighbors, or how far away we were from the action. I sold it for a massive profit. The market was on fire, and I didn't look back. I used the equity to buy a sleek, modern condo in the heart of downtown Seattle. It was the kind of place Jessica used to dream about: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Sound, a rooftop lounge, and a concierge. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, living the exciting city life she claimed she left me to find, but I was doing it without her. And I was doing it with a woman who actually contributed to that success rather than just draining it. My condo was only a few blocks away from Elena's penthouse. We became something of a power couple in our circle. My career was skyrocketing, my fitness was at its peak, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. A year had passed since Jessica walked out that door. I rarely thought about her anymore. She was just a blurry chapter in a book I had finished reading. I assumed she was out there somewhere, living her best life, happy with her freedom. I had no idea that while I was climbing to the top of the world, she was realizing that the bottom comes up a lot faster than you think. While I was busy building an empire, Jessica was busy discovering that the single life at 26 isn't quite the fairy tale Instagram promised. I found this out through the grapevine, specifically through a mutual friend named Sarah who I ran into at a coffee shop. Sarah was one of the few friends from our old life who hadn't taken sides, but she had watched the train wreck unfold. "She asked about you," Sarah said, looking a little uncomfortable as she stirred her latte. "Oh." I sipped my black coffee, surprised by how little I felt. No spike in heart rate. No anger. Just curiosity. "How is she?" "Not great, Mark," Sarah admitted, lowering her voice. "The freedom thing, it didn't really work out." Sarah spilled the tea. Apparently, Jessica's year of fun had crashed and burned months ago. The money she took from our joint savings had dried up faster than she expected. The exciting guys she met in clubs turned out to be exactly what you find in clubs: broke, immature, or looking for a one-night stand. The thrill of partying in Miami had worn off when she realized she was the oldest person at the table and the only one paying for her own drinks. She had moved back to Seattle a few months prior, crashing on a friend's couch because she couldn't afford an apartment on her own. She was working a temp job, something way below her skill level, just to make ends meet. She misses the stability, Sarah said, giving me a pointed look. She talks about the house all the time. She talks about how patient you were. I almost laughed. Of course she missed the stability. She missed the ATM. She missed the safety net she had set on fire. She doesn't know about? I gestured vaguely, implying my new life, my new condo, Elena. Sarah shook her head. No. I didn't tell her anything. She thinks you're still in the suburbs, probably pining away for her. She thinks you're the safe backup plan, waiting in the wings. I leaned back in my chair, a cold realization washing over me. Jessica wasn't just struggling, she was delusional. She truly believed that after gutting me and walking away, she could just stroll back in whenever she got tired of the real world. She thought I was a pause button she could unpress. Well, I said, standing up and buttoning my jacket. She's in for a surprise. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than air. But I had no idea that the surprise was already in motion, and it was going to arrive on my phone screen sooner than I thought. It happened on a Friday night. Elena and I were hosting a small dinner party at my new place, a housewarming for the inner circle. The vibe was perfect. Jazz was playing softly in the background, the city lights were twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the room was filled with the laughter of successful, happy people. Elena looked stunning in a crimson dress, effortlessly charming my friends, holding court with a glass of Pinot Noir in her hand. I was in the middle of opening another bottle of wine when my phone buzzed on the marble countertop. I usually ignore my phone during social events, but something made me look. It was a text from an unsaved number. I didn't recognize the digits, but I felt a strange, cold prickle on the back of my neck. I unlocked the screen. The message was short, but the audacity behind it was heavy enough to sink a ship. Hey, I've been thinking a lot lately. I had my fun, got it all out of my system. I think I'm ready to be a wife again. Let's talk. I stared at the screen. I blinked, thinking maybe I had had too much wine. But no, the words were still there. I had my fun. Like she had just gone on a long vacation. Ready to be a wife again. As if the position had been held open for her, vacant and waiting, while she auditioned other lives. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize for destroying our home. She just announced her return like a queen, expecting the castle gates to open. Everything okay? Elena appeared at my elbow, smelling like expensive perfume and confidence. I didn't say a word. I just handed her the phone. Elena read the text. Her eyebrows shot up, and then, a slow, amused smile spread across her face. She didn't get jealous. She didn't get angry. She just let out a soft, incredulous laugh. Wow, she whispered, handing the phone back to me. That is some serious confidence. I'm ready. Like she's ordering a pizza. She thinks I'm still the same guy, I said, shaking my head. Well, Elena clinked her glass against mine. She's texting a ghost. I looked at the message one last time. A year ago, that text would have sent me into a spiral. Now, it was just a joke. I didn't type a furious paragraph. I didn't demand an explanation. I simply swiped left and hit delete. I didn't even block the number this time. I just left her on read in the void. I put the phone face down and went back to my guests. I had a life to live, and talking to Jessica was definitely not on the menu. In the world of normal human interaction, silence is a clear answer. It means no, go away, or I'm not interested. But for Jessica, silence was apparently just a challenge. It was a void she felt compelled to fill with her own delusions. When I didn't reply to that Friday night text, I thought she would get the message and retreat to her pride. I was wrong. By Saturday morning, my phone looked like a crime scene. It started with a "Good morning, stranger" text at 9 a.m. By noon, it was a "Hello," followed by 3 question marks. By evening, The texts had morphed into a bizarre stream of consciousness that oscillated between nostalgia and aggression. I'm trying to be the bigger person here, Mark. You can't just ignore the history we have. Are you really going to throw away our marriage because of a break? She was calling it a break now. A year of no contact and filing for divorce was just a break in her mind. Then came the voicemails. I listened to one on Monday morning while driving to work, and I nearly drove off the road from the sheer audacity of it. Her voice was soft, almost pitying, like she was talking to a wounded animal. Mark, listen. I get it. You're hurt. You're trying to punish me by freezing me out, and I accept that. I forgive you for being distant. I know you need me to take the lead here, so I'm not going to give up on us. I'm ready to fix this. She forgave me. She had rewritten reality so thoroughly that in her head, I was the stubborn child and she was the benevolent savior returning to rescue me from my loneliness. She truly believed that my silence was just a defense mechanism, a wall that she needed to break down with a grand romantic gesture. Digital harassment wasn't enough, though. Since I wasn't picking up, she decided she needed a face-to-face. She needed to ambush me in my natural habitat. I found out later how she got my address. She cornered a junior associate from my old firm, a nice kid who didn't know the messy details of our divorce. She played the worried wife card, claiming she wanted to send me a surprise gift but had lost my new address. The kid, trying to be helpful, gave her the location of my downtown building. She wasn't just texting into the void anymore. She had a destination. And she was convinced that once I saw her, once I saw the wife I supposedly couldn't live without, I would crumble. Saturday mornings in my new life were sacred. They were quiet. They were peaceful. There was no drama, no rushing, just the smell of fresh ground coffee and the sunlight streaming in over the Seattle skyline. I was in the kitchen, pouring 2 mugs of dark roast, while Elena sat at the island counter. She was wearing one of my oversized dress shirts, her hair in a messy bun, reading the news on her tablet. It was a picture of domestic perfection, the kind of easy, comfortable silence I had always wanted but never really had with Jessica. Then, the peace was shattered. Bang, bang, bang. It wasn't a polite knock. It was insistent, rhythmic pounding on the heavy front door. I frowned. We weren't expecting anyone, and the building had a concierge, so unannounced guests were rare. I walked over to the video intercom mounted on the wall and tapped the screen. When the feed flickered to life, my stomach dropped, not out of fear, but out of sheer annoyance. It was Jessica. She was standing in the hallway, shifting her weight from foot to foot. She must have tailgated a resident through the main lobby to bypass security. She was holding a cardboard carrier with 2 coffees and a brown paper bag, a pathetic peace offering. She was wearing a dress I recognized, a floral sundress she used to wear on our anniversary dates 3 years ago. She had clearly picked it out to trigger a memory, to remind me of the good old times. But on the grainy camera screen, she just looked desperate. She looked like a salesperson trying to close a deal she had already lost. Unbelievable, I muttered, reaching for the talk button. I'm going to tell her to leave before I call security. I was ready to storm the door. I was ready to yell, to vent a year's worth of frustration right in her face. But before I could touch the handle, a hand landed softly on my forearm. Wait, Elena said. I turned. Elena had slid off the stool. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't angry. She looked completely unbothered, like she was about to handle a minor shipping error at work. She took a sip of her coffee, set the mug down, and smoothed the front of my shirt she was wearing. Don't yell, Elena said, her voice cool and steady. Let me get it. You. I blinked. Elena, she's crazy. You don't have to. Trust me, she interrupted, a mischievous glint in her eye. I think I'm exactly the person she needs to see right now. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway, leaning against the wall, and watched the scene unfold. My heart was pounding, not from nerves, but from a strange kind of anticipation. It felt like the season finale of a show I had been watching for a year. Elena unlocked the deadbolt with a calm, deliberate click. She paused for a second, composing herself, and then swung the heavy door wide open. On the other side, Jessica was ready. She had clearly rehearsed this moment 100 times in the elevator. She had a bright, winning smile plastered on her face, her head tilted just so, holding up the coffee carrier like a trophy. "Surprise!" she chirped, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. "I brought your fave." The sentence died in her throat. It didn't just fade away. It was strangled. Jessica wasn't looking at her ex-husband. She was looking up at a woman who was taller, calmer, and radiating a kind of authority that Jessica had spent 2 years shrinking away from. She was staring at Elena, her former boss from hell, the woman she had trashed to me for years out of pure insecurity. And the visual was devastating. Elena wasn't in a power suit this time. She was barefoot, her hair messy, wearing my dress shirt that hung loosely over her frame. It was a look that screamed intimacy. It said, "I live here. I belong here. And I am wearing his clothes." I watched the blood drain from Jessica's face. It happened in an instant. She went from flushed and hopeful to a sickly, ghost-white pale. Her eyes darted from Elena's face to the shirt, then to the interior of the luxury condo behind her. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Elena," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She took a stumbling step back, nearly dropping the coffees. What are you doing here?" Elena didn't flinch. She didn't look angry. She looked down at Jessica with the same cool, detached professionalism she used to have during board meetings. She leaned against the doorframe, took a slow sip of her coffee, and delivered the line that ended it all. "I live here, Jessica," Elena said, her voice smooth as silk. "But I'm confused. Did we have a meeting scheduled? Or are you just here to deliver a performance review?" The silence in the hallway was thick enough to choke on. Jessica stood frozen, her eyes bouncing between Elena's calm face and the coffee cups trembling in her own hands. The power dynamic had shifted so violently that the air felt heavy. I decided it was time to put her out of her misery. I stepped out from the shadows of the entryway and walked up behind Elena. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I simply wrapped my arm around Elena's waist and rested my chin near her shoulder, looking at my ex-wife with zero emotion. There was no anger left in me. Looking at Jessica now, disheveled, desperate, holding cold coffee in a hallway where she didn't belong, I didn't feel the rage I had nursed for months. I just felt pity. She looked small. "Mark." She choked out, her voice cracking, tears finally spilling over. I thought you were alone. I thought you needed me." "That's the problem, Jess," I said, my voice flat and steady. "You always thought this was about what I needed. You thought I was just sitting here in the dark, paused, waiting for you to decide when my life could start again." She took a step forward, desperation clawing at her. "But we were married, Mark. You can't just replace me like this. I'm ready to come home now." I tightened my hold on Elena slightly. "You are home," I said to her, before turning my eyes back to Jessica. "But this isn't your home anymore. You wanted freedom, remember? You wanted to find yourself. Well, you found yourself standing in a hallway, and I found the partner I should have been with all along." Jessica opened her mouth to argue, to beg, to use one of the manipulative lines that used to work on me. But she looked at Elena, who was still watching her with that cool, unbothered expression, and the words died in her throat. She realized she hadn't just lost me, she had lost me to the woman she had spent years envying. She had been upgraded, and she knew it. "I was never alone, Jessica," I said, reaching for the door handle. "I was just waiting for the right person. And she's right here. You can leave now." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't wait for her to turn around. I gently pulled the door shut. The heavy click of the latch locking was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I turned to Elena. She looked at me, raised an eyebrow, and grinned. "Well," she said, handing me my coffee. That was better than a performance review. We walked back to the balcony to watch the city wake up. I didn't look through the peephole. I didn't check my phone. I knew Jessica was gone, and for the first time in a year, I knew she wasn't coming back. And, honestly, I couldn't have cared less. And that is how you handle an ex who thinks the world revolves around them. She wanted the grass on the other side, but she forgot that once you leave the garden, you don't get a key to get back in. What do you guys think? Did Mark handle that too calmly, or was that the perfect revenge? And what would you do if your ex showed up at your door after a year of silence? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this story, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to Inspiration Seeker, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new videos every week to keep you motivated and entertained. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best upgrade is just letting go of what's weighing you down. See you in the next video.